You're listening to KLLGLP 97.9 Willits, California, Willits Hometown Radio. Thanks for tuning in and welcome to the Gnostic Connection. We are your hosts and metaphysical detectives, Damian and
Andrea Stone.
As Gnostic detectives, our role for each show is to investigate a specific topic of interest, uncover its inner wisdom, and share with you, the listener, our findings. Feel free to accept, reject, or modify our findings as you see fit. For today's episode, we will be making the Gnostic Connection with
Shadow Work,
a discussion. So, as you can probably tell, today marks a departure from the normally produced shows that I've done with Gnostic Connection. Today we're actually going to have two hosts. We are going to be bouncing around this topic of shadow work back and forth. Andria Stone is the voice that you heard probably about half the shows. She reads the quotes that I come up with for the shows. And she is also my partner of 15 years. And we met in Willits, and we lived in Willits for a few years, then we left Willits for about 7 years, and we returned to Willits, and we are doing this Gnostic Connection show, talking about shadow work. So why don't we start, Andrea, by letting people know what we mean by shadow work?
All right. Well, shadow work is a process of exploring and integrating the hidden or repressed parts of our personalities, often referred to as our shadow self. This practice helps us understand our unconscious emotions and behaviors, leading to personal growth and self-acceptance.
All right, very good. We both have been on a spiritual path. We've been on our own spiritual path. The Venn diagram is that I'd say we meet in the middle. About 50% of the practices that we do together, and we share like astrology and tarot, and shadow work being one of them. And we both feel like this is one of the most essential tools. Essential? Is that a word?
It should be.
Essential. Most essential tool in our spiritual expanding toolbook. Toolbook? That's not a word either. Tool belt. But these are words that toolbook, and what was the other one?
Essential.
Essential. It's, yeah, I could see that being used in an erotic novel.
There you go. In sort of some tool book, maybe.
Yeah, inside the tool book. All right, so to get some groundedness with the idea of shadow work, it's the name itself can sound intimidating, and even like emo or something. Like you
yes,
imagine
very dark.
Someone dressed all in black and listening to The Cure for 24 hours a day.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Exactly. No, there isn't. The purpose of it is super enlightening and positive, and the result of not doing it is
the world we live in today, I would say.
Yeah. Right. Is a lot of countries and people aren't doing their shadow work.
Yes. Shadow work isn't about identifying all of our faults or all of the ways that we're bad people. It's about identifying the patterns in our lives, why we react certain ways, why we feel certain ways, and they're all just based on our circumstances and life experiences. It's not a part necessarily of who we truly are, but it is an aspect of how we interact with the world. And so a lot of the things that are buried in shadow are probably strengths, are good things, are maybe things that you've repressed about yourself.
One thing that came to mind, in most cases, I think the hidden is sometimes also repressed. And so what is repressed is in shadow. And I'm thinking of, like, speaking of being in Willits, leaving Willits and coming back to Willits, within the first couple months of coming to Willits, I had to deal with a major shadow, and that was my repression of being on stage and performing. I had the desire about being a performer on stage, but it was so scary that I just assumed that I was going to live the rest of my life never having to face that fear. And then on the other side of the fear is the triumph of doing it, and then the experience of it. And Willits was the setup for me to perfectly experience that, as in a Willits Shakespeare Company. with some kid actors and a young director. And it ended up working out in such a way that after that, I've been in like 30 plays. I've written and directed.
Yeah, no, it's a huge part of your life.
Yeah.
I didn't know you before you did that, but it's hard to imagine you not being a theater person at this point.
Yeah, me too. Take those experiences out of my life, and I almost don't even know who I am.
Yeah.
And yet, for my first 30 years of life, I was in dread of the idea.
And probably because at some point in your life, or many points in your life, either something happened or someone said something that led you to believe that you wouldn't have the ability or the confidence to do something like that. Those things that we often say to ourselves, like, oh, I could never do that. Mm-hmm. That's probably a good indicator of some sort of shadow work. I mean, I'm not talking about moral things like I could never kill a person. That's probably not shadow work. That's probably just a great idea. But yeah, a lot of the things that we don't feel confident to do, I would say probably at some point somewhere, somebody said something that your ego took very much to heart. Mm-hmm. And it becomes hard to unravel that, and they become so buried that we forget that they were ever even there. We're not even conscious of it anymore.
Yeah. So that is an example of a repressed talent or repressed gift or repressed something that's positive. Another way to look at shadow work, I think you had a really good example, a metaphor that I really liked.
Oh, the windshield. We're like a windshield after a road trip. You get home or to the gas station, and there's all kinds of bugs and dust and debris, and you clean it off. And you expect to see it there because you've just been on a road trip. You've traveled quite a bit. You've accumulated some crud. Mm-hmm. But you don't think to yourself, oh my gosh, this is a terrible windshield. What a horrible windshield to have allowed this to happen. No, you just clean it off so that then you can see things more clearly. And you continue on, and you probably accumulate some more stuff that'll have to be cleared off too. But such is the nature of life.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I like that metaphor is it's so plain and obvious that you don't blame the windshield. And yet it's not so plain and obvious when we look at our own life and look back and the things that trigger embarrassment or shame. We all have it, like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have said that, or I can't believe I did that. And it just, what keeps us from looking at it is that shame and embarrassment, where part of shadow work is it's really important to do the investigation, to go into the past like a detective or a journalist or
you're
editor.
Uncovering where and how it started.
Yeah, or a scientist even. Like you're really, that's what you want to do, is try to be like a scientist. And the scientist needs to be in a level-headed, reasonable, rationable, objective frame of mind.
Rationable.
Did I say rationable? Today's been a day where I take 2 or 3 different words and put them all together in one word.
Well, you're just trying to save time.
I think it's because I have a repressed talent as a hip-hop artist. And those are types of words that I think would make hit songs.
There you go. Second half of your life. All set.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and ultimately, when we go to investigate these things and we find these aspects of ourselves that are not serving us or make our lives more difficult, make our interactions more difficult, again, it's not about blaming ourselves or pointing out how terrible we are. It's finding those things so we can transmute them into our strengths. So, like I am a very, very stubborn person, and that can be difficult when my stubbornness comes out in a knee-jerk sort of reaction. Anything new, I'm sort of, no. But if I take the time and I don't knee-jerk react to things and I consciously think about those things, that stubbornness is probably one of my greatest strengths, because I can stand in my own power. When I know what I want, then I'm kind of immovable, and that ultimately is a good thing. It's not a good thing when somebody just makes a suggestion of, hey, let's do this instead of that, and because my mind was set on the other thing, then my immediate response is no.
Right, and that comes from your instinctual stubbornness.
Yes, because of not wanting to be controlled. And so then anytime anything sounds or even has a hint that someone is trying to, quote unquote, make me do something, then I dig my heels in, even if it was something I wanted to do.
Your ability to admit that, are you now drenched in shame and embarrassment?
Not anymore. I used to feel bad about it anytime you or my best friend or my mom or anyone would say, oh, God, you're so stubborn. And I took that to be a bad thing, but it's not a bad thing in and of itself. It's just a part of, who I am. And it's more about being conscious about how I direct it and utilize it.
And that's also kind of what I think is very helpful with tools like astrology. They help in the practice of investigation and self-acceptance. It's easy to make fun of people who say, "Oh I'm sorry I did that. I'm a Gemini," and make excuses based on their astrology. That's something that they need to do some shadow work with. However, for yourself, telling that to yourself, that's right. That my Leo came out and I got wounded because I wasn't the center of attention at the party or something like that. That self-awareness and self-acceptance of your Leo-ness can be very helpful because now it points out how you could transmute the Leo vanity and transmute it into something like being a good performer and giving other people who could be performers too in a situation, working with them, yes-anding them instead of no-butting them. Or
giving them room to shine also.
Yeah, and interact, because Leo-ness is fun when you're interacting with other people.
I mean, there are just aspects of us that they're there to stay, but it doesn't mean that you are now controlled by them.
Yeah. And as soon as they're in the light of awareness, they lose their control because then you have established yourself as apart from them and as an observer of them. And that's what mindfulness is really about. It's just being able to kind of step outside of yourself and see yourself for who you are and polish that mirror so that you can see yourself clearly.
A lot of times we get sort of stuck on the labeling aspect of it. I feel like there has sort of been a trend in the recent years of, there are YouTube videos all over the place of, is someone in your life a narcissist, labeling anxiety or post-traumatic stress. And much like astrology, those labels are helpful in that they give us sort of a roadmap of where to start. Like, okay, I know that I have PTSD from some traumatic event, and I think sometimes the danger is that then we utilize that label to define ourselves as a whole, and that, that's just who I am. And so it is now incumbent on the rest of the world to meet me where I am, which would be lovely, but that is rarely going to happen. And so it's more about trying to find that peace within yourself, to be okay in yourself, regardless of your circumstances or situation, because people are going to trigger you. It's just going to happen.
Yeah. Which is, there's this famous Peter Crone quote that we both love, and
yes,
I repeat again and again on a daily basis. And the quote is, "The world will provide for you people, places, and situations to reveal where you're not free." Something like that.
Yeah.
Knowing that, where that people will show you where you're not free, meaning the other day when because I got bit by a dog recently, I'm more on edge when I'm around dogs, and that's an emotional thing. That's like, I can't rationalize my way up. My body now is reacting in a way it hasn't reacted because I got bit by a dog, and I was doing all the right things, and I still got bit, and I never got bit before, and I was born in the year of the dog, so it was very wounding to have had that happen, and then at the same time, I keep running into dogs lately, and they've been all kinds of on the spectrum from being super friendly to being very, very aggressive and barking, and then being tied to owners that aren't the most present and aware of their crazy dog. And so it's all concentrated in this month that this has happened. And so it's revealing to me where I'm not free in the sense of my blood pressure goes up. Like I can feel it. My heart rate goes up as soon as I see a dog, no matter what kind of dog. And then so now I have to ask myself a series of questions, and then I have to talk myself down and whatever. And then the other side of that is it's also making me more aware, and also realizing that, while most of my experiences with dogs have been really good or neutral, it is good to have that one negative experience, because now I know that that's in the realm of possibility, and then I'll be ready for it more likely, and then less wounded if it happens, or at the same time maybe be in a position to make sure that it doesn't happen.
Things are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen to good people. Good things are going to happen to bad people. Life is. Circumstances are. And resistance to that is usually what causes our crises in some way. But also, our brains are wired for some reason, well, I guess probably protection long ago, to more readily pay attention to the negative than to the positive. Emphasize. Thank you.
Negative, because that's a survival technique.
Right. Yeah. So, like you'd said, all of your experiences in your life have been good or neutral with dogs, and this one thing happened, and now you're having a physical response and an emotional response and a psychological response to this one negative. It doesn't matter that you've had 550 great interactions. It's just the one. And so we're sort of having to work against that a little bit, against our own kind of wiring. But at the same time, I would say probably any time that you're feeling bad about something is probably a clue to some sort of shadow work.
Well, another thing that it's done for me is given me a sense of empathy for those people who are afraid of dogs. And I think I even mentioned this probably about a month or so before that. We were dog sitting, and I was taking this dog on a walk, the same trail as I always go in brook trails. And there was this woman who I thought at the time was being overly dramatic in her fear. She's putting her hands up, and she's leaning back away from us. And I had the leash, and in my mind, it was so obvious. Daisy was so friendly, the friendliest dog in the universe. Can't you see that? And and so I even think I judged her, and I'm like, and I talked about it with you. Why are people like that? And now I sort of get it, and I don't know if I would behave that way, but I get why she did, because she might have gotten bit way worse than I did.
Right. It might have happened to her when she was a kid, and she's, not been able to get past that. So now it affects her. And we all have those things in one way or another.
Yeah. And to bring that back to what you said about our strong reactions are indications of where we can do shadow work. And a lot of times those strong reactions can be new, like my new thing with the dogs. Now, because I have those reactions, now I can know, okay, what does this mean? And how is this an opportunity for me to learn about myself? And I just, I just came up with that through this discussion of having more compassion and empathy for people who are afraid of dogs.
And on that note, I would say one of the most important things in doing shadow work is having compassion and empathy for yourself. Yeah. Because it is very easy when you start digging through all those shadows, and sometimes it goes a lot deeper than you were expecting, and you just think, oh my God, how have people even been able to be around me? Like, I have so many issues, so many problems, or whatever. I mean, on the one hand, probably people are able to be around you because they have at least half of those issues and things too. And we do a lot of shadow work with each other, whether we realize it or not, probably. But if you cannot give yourself some grace and forgiveness for being human, then it's really going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah. And I would even suggest for people like that, I think most people criticize themselves internally more than they do other people.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have the statistics on that. But
So my best friend recently got a puppy. For several months, my friend was in crisis mode because, I don't know, I mean, I've never raised a puppy, and after seeing what she went through, I never will. But what she was really struggling with, my friend, was her anger issues, where she could be just fine, and then all of a sudden the puppy would find something that she thought she had kept out of its reach, and now it's chewed it up and destroyed it, some rather expensive things. And she would say, you know, I would go from 0 to 100 with rage. And, you know, she never hits the dog or anything, but she would yell at her and then immediately feel terrible and guilty and ashamed for yelling at the dog, and was just really going through, I don't understand why I get angry so quickly, how I can get to that point, like where, and I mean, I've seen it, and it is rage. And then it quickly dissipates after that. But until she got to a point where she recognized that rage was patterned into her from her childhood and was able to stop blaming herself for having it, she wasn't making any headway. And now sometimes she'll still explode, but she can catch it really quickly. She's able to catch it much more quickly. She's able to rein it in, sometimes without even yelling. And when we would talk about it, and you know, how do I stop doing this? Why am I this way? And basically, we came up with that. Well, you're conscious of it now. So every time it happens, instead of spending 15 minutes hating yourself, just think like, okay, well, I caught it. I'm aware of it. And maybe next time you'll catch it a second faster, and then a second faster, until eventually it's not an issue. But it's not something that's going to happen overnight. And it's definitely not something that is ever going to be healed if we're constantly blaming and hating on ourselves for it.
she probably wouldn't have come to a lot of the realizations about herself, about her anger, without having something like as innocent and pure as a golden retriever puppy.
Yeah.
And because then it becomes a stark juxtaposition, that cute puppy being yelled at, by a big adult. And then seeing the reaction immediately, and the puppy probably triggered, oh no,
Right.
And
well, to be fair, the puppy didn't really seem to care. I mean, she does now, but yeah.
Well, right. She chose a more difficult puppy than most, one that would regularly eat its poop.
Yes.
Right away.
Or rocks or whatever.
Yeah. And just wanted to eat everything. Yeah. And it didn't care what any boundaries were. I mean, it's a puppy. Which
is sort of like how life is. And, you can't train life right away, so all you can do is sort of train yourself.
All right. So one of the interesting ironies when you first get into spirituality, whether it's through a religion or it's your own path that you're going on, any kind of spiritual unfoldment path or metaphysical path, whatever it is. Found this good quote that kind of talks about that in terms of being on a spiritual path and doing shadow work. In reality, those traversing the spiritual awakening journey are particularly susceptible to the emergence of the shadow self, as the ego, the light side of the shadow, loves to drape itself in robes of light and bliss, appearing special, untouchable, and enlightened. When we first get on the path, a lot of times this will happen with some kind of peak experience, whether you might have a vision or a dream, or I had a major peak experience in 2003 where I've never had an experience like that since or before, and is one of those things that because I hadn't done the appropriate shadow work and therapy and that experience didn't stick. I had an awakening basically, and wasn't able to fully integrate it. I was too young and didn't know what it was and how to make it stay, so to speak. The years that followed, I slowly sunk into addiction and alcoholism after my marriage collapsed, and then so I was kind of like on a plateau place when I quit drinking in 2018. Soon after that, as happens when you, quote, defeat a major addiction, that was one that I didn't know how I was going to ever defeat it. And when I did, it was like, my life's going to get so much better now because I'm sober. I lost all this weight. I look great. I'm looking younger. I'm going to all this potential. And yes, all that was true. But then the thing that seems to be universally true with addictions, the longer you are in that addiction, it's almost like you were on pause and now you're restarting your game to where you were when you started the addiction.
Well, you have arrested development at wherever you kind of started.
So I addiction. And because when you're an addict, a major addict like alcoholism, your shadow work is the thing that you need to do is the alcoholism, whatever it caused that. But as long as you're staying an alcoholic, it's, you're never going anywhere. But anyway, so once I finally did, and then soon after I got back into tarot, I got back into the occult and mindfulness, and all I was doing was listening to Eckhart Tolle and Peter Crone and all those people. And I couldn't, you were into that supernatural show, and you've always had that Scorpio kind of dark edge about that you're attracted to the darkness and all that. And because I was into being a light worker or learning how to be and doing tarot readings again and being all into light and love, and I couldn't be around that. And my shadow side was being almost ignored because I thought affirmations, qigong, and all the things that I was doing, which were great, I was just doing all the light stuff, but doing no investigation. And not only that, but I was working consciously to avoid. I was even thinking that to look at that was to make it grow.
Yes.
That was actually my belief. I think I even told you stuff like that.
Well, and I think that there is sort of that belief when people talk about vibrating at a higher frequency, and it becomes this idea that, oh, if I think anything negative, if I say anything negative, if I entertain anything negative at all, then my frequency will go down and I'm not vibrating as high. And so I just have to love and light, everything's fine, everything's great. Nope, everything's good. I'm just grateful to be here. And as long as I just keep saying that, then I will keep vibrating up here and everything will be fine until it isn't. And then you're sort of like, but I did everything right. What happened? But you had no foundation to build upon. So
yeah. And it's just the way, like when I look back at it now, there were some cringy elements to how I was when I go back. But for the most part, I'm more proud of myself than anything, and just glad that I, removed those shackles of that addiction, and that I brought all those people into my life, all those teachers and those books and all that stuff. And because they end up becoming useful when it came to time for me to look at the dark sides of myself.
Yeah, and it's all timing. Your higher self kind of has that figured out. So it all comes to you when your higher self knows you're ready. And I think it's an important part for a lot of people. I know it was for me coming out of addiction, that you do just sort of have to create these really stiff boundaries around yourself, because it's a scary time and it's a slippery slope and you don't want to go backwards. So sometimes you have to just kind of be above everything to stay where you are. And then as you get more confident in your sobriety, it's easier to expand.
We've seen this a lot because we started traveling a lot, we would find the new age people or we seemed just to be drawn to them, and wherever we went, hang out with those groups, and you would always find in those groups people who just acted very guru-y and very love and light and very like they know everything and all, they have it all figured out, be living in that space in the sense of just ultra positive and vibrant and all of that. But then the more you get to know them, you realize there became a lot of topics that they steered way away from, or they would act in ways that were very counter to how they were portraying themselves overtly. And then it soon became obvious that, they haven't done really any shadow work, and that they want people to like them, and that is very important that people like pay attention to them and listen to them, because they have all the stuff that they need to say. And you are at the level of wisdom that you resonate naturally, and then people, I think, can just pick up on it.
Yeah.
So you might attract a lot of people at first, like some of these people did, but then they soon, okay, this isn't what I thought, or this person isn't quite who they acting like they are. And then so they just recycle followers, basically. Because they really, if they could do it, they would be cult leaders. That's really what they want. And guess what? There's a part of me that wants that. There's I've had fantasies about being a leader and being throughout my life, like playing Dungeons and Dragons. I've gone on. I even played a cleric who wanted to form his own religion in Dungeons and Dragons, and that was a reflection of part of my desire. But knowing that that's a predilection in me, that's a Leo rising kind of aspect, I can entertain it, but not act on it. Entertain it in my imagination, and then find out the healthier expression of it, and then do that.
Yeah, and I have feelings when I see the 25-year-old life coach who's telling you how to live your best spiritual life, thinking, I don't even know that you've been alive long enough to to have encountered all of the aspects that one would need. But, what do I know?
I'd like to bring it around to that. I think is very important, and that is, this is the world we live in. The culture we live in hasn't done its shadow work.
Yeah.
So if that's the truth, and that all of our systems are informed by that dynamic, that means that we are all each up against it upon birth.
Yeah.
Toxicity everywhere. And toxic programming, basically focused learning, like what are the things that we learn in school versus what we don't learn. We don't learn anything about psychology, about our own behavior, about how to live cooperatively with each other. I mean, in kindergarten, I think when I went to kindergarten, they taught those things and we sang. And then after that, it was like, all right, now we're algebra.
Get to work. Yeah.
We got to make computer programmers out of you so that the lithium miners in Africa can have something to work for. We have a whole world against us, against the heart, against compassion, love, unity, cooperation, all the things that we want to teach our kindergartners. The rest of life is pressing all of those human needs and desires. So then by the time we're in our 20s, we've accumulated all this trauma, all this learning that's counter to being happy and living communally, as we all say. Unless they've had a huge, profound awakening and they're the next Eckhart Tolle or something, for the most part, they're not really qualified. And sorry if there's any 25-year-old life coaches, but if you're in a specific life coach, maybe you're really good at algebra and you're calling yourself an algebra coach, that's great because that's specific. But if you're a life coach, concentrate on doing your shadow work, and then the other stuff will just unfold for you. Spiritual bypassing, we often don't know we're doing it until either somebody we know and love and trust can shine a mirror back at us and we can see how our behavior is, or if we get into a pattern over and over again and we finally realize, oh wait, this keeps happening, I need to change something. Do you want to talk about an example of spiritual bypassing, a quick one?
I think we all do it to some extent because just psychologically protecting ourselves, our minds are not going to reveal all of the shadows at once, probably. So I know I have certainly been in places where I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's done. Fix that. Mm-hmm. And I talked with my sister about this a lot. The number of times that we're like, oh, okay, here we are. This again. Is this ever going to get resolved? I keep feeling like I've addressed it. Why does it keep coming up? And it's because we've had years and years and years of patterning, and a weekend of, self-discovery is not going to unravel all of that generally, unless you just have, like you said, some huge awakening, aha kind of thing. But for most of us, that doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had a few of those aha awakening things. A major awakening, seeing God, feeling one with God, however you want to say it. And it still doesn't mean I get to bypass anything. I don't, because that's not the quote real world. Although I think that's the real world and this is the fake world, but we're in the fake world most of the time. So we have to make the best of it as we can and navigate it with, and to be present all the time is really the kind of the marker.
Yeah.
Am I always present? No. Oh, I have shadow work to do. If I am always present, if I'm just always living in the present, then what's there to do? No, you're there. That's the point of it all.
Yeah. What gets frustrating for me is that I know all of the things. Like, I know we're all one. I know that there is much more than this sort of pseudo reality that we're living in. But I also have many, many years of a society and a culture and a life that's telling me, no, that's not true, that I still have to get over. So you can know all these things intellectually, but you have to get them down to the point of gnosis, to that Gnostic connection. And I think that is often the challenge, and that is often where we are tempted to give up or to feel like, oh, I can't do this. I'm not strong enough to do this, whatever it is. But I also feel like a lot of the shadow work just happens organically. Like, you're not necessarily setting out to resolve some issue within yourself, but some sort of crisis or circumstance or event happens in your life that forces you to look at it. For
me, that was when, soon after I quit drinking, all the things that I used drinking to gloss over or hide from, like my irritability or my anger issues, which I didn't think I had any of, they all came to the front. When I almost lost it on my 10 or 11-year-old, I think at the time, nephew in a game of D&D, and the raw just anger that came up, and luckily I said a couple things, but I didn't, fully act on it. But what I wanted to do, or what energy wanted to do in that moment, was very scary to me, and I was so embarrassed and so ashamed and everything, even though that wasn't anything. He wasn't seeing anything that he hadn't seen from his own father or mother or whatever when they get mad at him. But I never do that, so I'm not supposed to. And here I was behaving in that way, and not just behaving it, but feeling it. That anger forced me to look at it, and that's the thing about being sober. Once you're on the path of sobriety, things stick out to you. You notice things more that you didn't. And so you either are going to keep doing it or transmute it. So you're forcing yourself to do shadow work, like I wasn't calling it shadow work before.
No,
Now I am. Now I know that there's actual specific practices to do, and there's philosophy behind it and everything. There's a song by PIL, and I forget what it was called, but the Public Image Limited, Johnny Rotten was the lead singer from the Sex Pistols, and there's a refrain called "Anger is an energy." I get to transmute the anger energy force within me. That's part of my ancestry lineage, and I get to use that energy towards doing things, towards creating, instead of denying that I have anger issues and trying to shove that down or judge it or whatever. Now it's become a superpower where it's given me lots of energy, lots of time for meditation, for downloading. Anger comes up when I see the news, when I see people saying belligerent things online or whatever. It still triggers me, so I know. So that's the indicator. That's what's so important about that quote.
That life will present you with people and circumstances.
Yeah, to reveal where you're not free. And so I'm like, not free yet from the anger demon. And then I still have some work to do on that. And so why don't we talk about what is the work? We keep saying shadow work. And the first thing is, what do we need to do?
What is happening in you, what those feelings are, what has triggered you, maybe why it triggered you. And it's not to say that anger is a bad thing. There are times when anger is totally appropriate to a situation. It's not about getting rid of these things.
Right.
But if that anger at something you saw on the news 4 hours ago is still eating away at your insides, then that's something that you would probably want to work on, because what is that serving? It's not serving you, it's not serving your community or the world around you. So there's that. So identifying it is number one, and recognizing whether it's helping you or hindering you.
Well, the thing with anger is that it has a tendency to instill one into the immediate need of lashing out or to doing something with it.
Yes.
And so if you're not in control of it and it's control of you, then it is a force of, it's one of the 7 deadly sins. It's one of the chakras, poisons of one of the chakras in Hinduism and Buddhism. It's rage. You're right, it is. There are things worthy of being, quote, angry about.
Yes.
And I'm proud of the things that trigger me into anger, in the sense that it shows me that I have humanity. I don't like it when I hear about children getting bombed. If I'm thinking, yeehaw, more children getting bombed, there's probably something very much wrong with me. But if it does instill anger in me or something like that, then it shows that I'm feeling compassionate towards those families that just lost kids.
Right.
And for the fact that there's a circumstance that humanity thinks that it's okay to do such a thing, that there are enough people that thinks that building bombs is like a good thing or a necessary thing, when we need to get beyond, we need to do the shadow work to realize that there's other ways to solve conflicts than dropping bombs on people.
Yeah. And I think as far as the work itself, it's, pretty individualistic as far as what works for you does not necessarily work for me, or vice versa. I don't even know sometimes that there is work so much as just constantly identifying it and constantly checking in with yourself that, I'm starting to do that again. Let's bring that back. But then there's like meditation. There are things you can do, but the work itself, I think, is more about the consciousness of it, right?
G.I. Joe said, knowing is half the battle. You still have the other half to do. And I think what you're saying is that the other half will happen as a result of the constant awareness. But I would suggest that optimize the work, you have to have an intention. So,
right. Well, I wasn't necessarily getting to the transmuting part much as just because there's the shadow work. I guess shadow work involves maybe the transmuting, but to me, the shadow work part is just every time I get frustrated because someone is just being themselves or doing what they do or whatever, and it frustrates me and I'm carrying that, like it's the consciousness of it. But I don't know that there's a whole lot I can do like ahead of time. Like I don't know that 18 hours of meditation would then make me less frustrated when something happens. So the transmutation part, the transmuting it, that to me, I guess maybe is the work. I don't know.
Well, yeah. I think it's all work.
Yeah.
It's all in. I feel like it's all about stating intentions for yourself. So, for instance, what I would do if somebody is new to the concept and wants to actually oh, I want to engage in shadow work. Where do I start? I would say,
I see.
Start right now. When you look at the past week, what is the thing that most upset you, that most triggered you? Or was it a physical thing where you like just tired for like way more than usual and you just didn't have any energy and that created irritability or whatever? Look at what is your issue now and then start there. That means that there's some kind of pattern going on and that you're acting out that pattern and it's asking to be noticed and for you to do something about it. You start there and then you start doing some investigating about it. Is this something that is new or is this something that's has always been part of my life? And the ones that are bugging you the most in the present are probably attached to something significant that's way down the line from childhood. Like my migraines, when I investigated the cause of my migraines, that took me back to specific incidences that I could look at and then do ceremony with transmuting it. And so ceremony is just creating a space where you're acknowledging what the shadow is, you're engaging it, and you can do it in all kinds of different ways. I like to personify my shadows. I give it a name, I thank it, I give it gratitude. And for why I give it gratitude, I'm just say, hey, thanks, dude. I like say, hey, thank you for my migraines. Thank you for eating my negative emotions when I was young, when I couldn't handle them, and protecting me from having to experience that kind of trauma. Did a great job. Now it's time to have you graduate to do a different job. That was how I handled that situation. And it's not like it's all cured. It's not like I haven't had migraines since then. But they have been different, and they've been less frequent. And it gave me a foothold. It gave me control over the situation for the first time ever since I started getting migraines when I was 15.
But again, it's that I have to be conscious every time that feeling of stubbornness comes in to recognize, is this stubbornness for the sake of being stubborn, or is there something here that I really need to be standing in my own power right now?
Yeah.
So to me, it's still, yes, ceremony and ritual and all of that. It's definitely good for the transmuting aspect of it, but I still find, even after having done ceremonies several times for many things, that it still comes back down to I have to be conscious in that moment of what I'm doing. And I'm not always. It doesn't always work. But I notice that if in an argument that I'm having with you where I'm feeling frustrated because you're cutting me off, but at the same time that I'm feeling frustrated that you're cutting me off, I'm in the process of cutting you off. And but not aware of that part of it. I'm only feeling the part that bothers me. I'm not able in that moment to look at, oh, well, perhaps he is also feeling that same way. Mm-hmm. But I have noticed that now, instead of fuming about how wrong you are for 5 hours or whatever, until I can finally come back to it and be like, all right, yeah, I guess maybe I had a part in this too. Like, it's that fuming section has sort of gone away to where I'm like, oh, I'm feeling really angry, but I recognize I had a part in this too. And then things deflate. So, but again, it's that being conscious. And I haven't spent any time doing anything about trying not to, I don't do affirmations about, I will not cut Damian off when we're having an argument. I haven't done anything around that. Mm-hmm. It's just being oh, this is something that I do. So now in every argument or discussion we have, then I'm consciously looking at, okay, was I doing stuff that was also bothering me? Oh, yes, I was. Mm-hmm. So that's still something to work on.
Yeah. I think when it comes to those things, those patterns that have been part of our lives for a long time and then express themselves in different situations in a similar fashion over and over again, and to become mindful of them, I don't know how you would go about transmuting that specific because that's a trait. That's a personality trait that I think, you're right, it just takes time and practice. Biggest gift you can give yourself in all of this is to identify less with your personality and more with the one that's doing the mindfulness.
Right.
So, because that's what being mindful is watching yourself. So if you think about the language of that, well, what does that even mean? How can I watch myself?
Right.
But we all know what that means. So the fact that we can watch ourselves means that we're not the one doing necessarily, or even the one thinking, or even,
in this body per se.
But the more we identify as the watcher, then the more that watcher can have agency over behavior through noticing. And that's what I think of what you're saying.
Right.
About,
Which I guess actually brings up a good point, because I think a lot of shadow work too, that we're sort of talking about two prongs of the same fork, in that there's also the transmuting of wounds. So there's the healing of our wounds, the shadows, the wounds that we have kept in the shadows, the things that happened to us when we were kids or whatever. Like that, I think, is when you really need to start doing, therapy or affirmations or meditations around it, because you're trying to heal that wound so that the pattern that you have created from it, the pattern of behavior, doesn't continue. So in that case, you have to be doing the work, not just while you're reacting from that wound, but when you're not reacting.
That's why I like the chakra method. You don't even have to subscribe to any of, you don't even have to believe that we have chakras to do it.
Yeah, and it's more of a maintenance.
It's what they mean. So the first chakra means your sense of safety and belonging and your basic foundational needs as a being on this planet. That's something that we all share. It's just in the energy anatomy of beings, we assign that to the first chakra. And then the second chakra is your desires. The third chakra is your power. And the fourth chakra is your heart, your emotions, your capacity to love and give love, receive love, and have compassion and harmonize with others. So these are all traits that we all have. So if you go through them one by one and you ask yourself, where do I need to do shadow work? What is hiding from me? That's another way to ask the question. What is hiding from me in my first chakra that I most need to know about? Just asking that question while you're taking a nap or going to sleep, your dreams can give you some kind of answer, or your life. Life will present to you if you ask it. It'll answer the questions by presenting it.
Yeah, show me where I'm stuck.
Show me where I'm stuck.
Yeah, where I'm not able to progress. Reiterate the compassion for self while going through this process. And, think about maybe the person you're closest to in your life, and the love and forgiveness and acceptance and grace that they give you, and then try to emulate them with yourself.
Yeah.
When you're doing this, because it is hard, and you will uncover some darkness that, there are some dark things in me that I spent most of my life in denial of, because I am a nice, good person. I don't have those things, but I'm also a human being. So yeah, I do.
Yeah. I remember the first time that I did shadow work without knowing that's what I was doing had to do with jealousy. When I was in my early 20s, I fashioned myself like a beatnik and an explorer of boundaries, pushing boundaries, and a rebel and all of that. So if I was going to be all those things, then I couldn't be jealous, because I was also exploring polyamory, although we didn't call it that. And I didn't understand why the women I was with would get so jealous so easily. And then they would go have sex with somebody else or flirt with somebody else. The jealousy and the rage that would come up with intense and amazingly powerful. And yet I wasn't able to accept it because I told myself that jealousy is bad and I'm not a jealous person.
It went against the picture of yourself that you had created.
Yeah, and it happened enough that it helped when I met people who admitted that they were jealous. Who even said, I'm a jealous person. And I'm like, wow, they're admitting it. That gave me permission at that age. I guess I needed permission.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of times we do. And I think also it's important to note that with shadow work, things are not like that are not going to go away. Like if you are a jealous person, you will probably continue to be a jealous person. But with the shadow work, you are able to say, yep, I'm feeling jealous right now, but I also acknowledge that I don't need to be, or it's not appropriate to this particular circumstance or whatever. Mm-hmm. You're not looking to just get rid of all of the quote unquote negative things about yourself. It's more about recognizing them and going, oh, okay, this is a part of me. How can I integrate this into my life so that I can move through this life with more ease and grace?
Thanks for tuning in to another hour of the Gnostic Connection. If you've got something to share about shadow work, your journey, your insights, your questions, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out anytime at 979-KLLG@KLLG.org, and let's talk about getting you on the show. You're listening to KLLG LP 97.9 FM, Willits, California, Willits Hometown Radio. From my heart to yours, may we all be happy, loving, powerful, and free.